Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Rangers Review morning briefing for Monday, the 2nd of August. I'm Derek Clark, and I'm joined this morning by Joshua Barry. Joshua, good weekend?
Yeah, good weekend, mate. Yeah, it was. Enjoyed the game on Saturday. It was a good Saturday, all in all, and looking forward to tomorrow now.
Yeah, absolutely. Huge game taking place, of course, in Sweden against Malmo. But we'll just touch on that first off, Joshua, because Steven Gerrard has been up bright and early this morning. He's already given his press conference ahead of the game. Some interesting takeouts from that press conference. I'll just read some of the schedules here. It just shows you the depth of his squad. He says, "We are used to this sort of schedule. It is the reason why I've built a strong squad, as is impossible to ask the same 11 players to go every match. We have a few suspensions and injuries for this match, but we have more than enough to put a good team out." Now, Joshua, I've seen a little graphic this morning of two Rangers sides, basically a first 11 and a second string. It's frightening the amount of quality he has at his disposal, Steven Gerrard. So he's got some selection dilemmas tomorrow night.
He does, yeah, and he said that at the weekend with Wright as well. He mentioned a few times that the selection was with a mind of Tuesday, which is Tuesday compared to Saturday was obviously the most difficult game, which is why I think you see Helander and Barisic rested. But you look at, I put out a tweet of the players that weren't in the squad, and I've not got it in front of me, but off the top of my head, I think it was Jack, Morelos, Kelly, Barisic, Helander, Katic, and maybe one more. And I mean, that's really impressive. But I think it's what you need. I think there's still a little bit of trimming to do in terms of, you're not including in that quota players like Jones and Barker and more fringe players. So I think in terms of actual squad numbers, they do need to shift a few off. But who could come into that midfield tomorrow? You've got Arfield, Lundstrom, if he was fit, Jack. Three excellent midfielders who had no part to play in the weekend. So it is what we need. I think. Without the 5 substitutions rule, which Gerrard also spoke about post-match, you'll start to have times where you'll have players who maybe won't get into squads, which is, I guess, an issue that Gerrard maybe hasn't really had before, because last season was his biggest squad, and obviously we had 5 substitutions on a bigger bench. But I think it's in a much more desirable position than in the past when we've not had that same depth going into the start of a season and the start of a European campaign, which will be tricky to get to the Champions League.
Yeah, it certainly will. Gerrard has touched on that. He says, "I've watched a lot of Malmo in the last 10 days and I've been impressed with the fitness levels and work ethic. They can play with a 4 but also change to a back 5. So we have to be prepared for this. They can be very aggressive and press high at home." That's what I've been hearing. I've been speaking to a number of people with regards to this, and they do say that at home they are pretty impressive. It's a tight ground. The fans get right behind the team. They make a lot of noise. And the best team in Scandinavia, the Swedish champions, are no mugs, Joshua. So it's going to be a difficult tie. Of course, they're about 12, 13 games into their season as well. So they've had more preparation.
I think there are 13 games, and they're 1 point off the top. And it's obviously no away goals.
Yeah,
tomorrow, which I mean, I don't really know how I feel about that, but because I think that there's you say they're a strong team at home, but I think I think they'll be looking across at us and seeing the teams that have come to Ibrox and the matches that we've played for the last few seasons and thinking that's going to be quite a tricky affair, especially if it's a full house. I've watched a good bit of their game against Helsinki, and Helsinki are a weaker opposition, and and Malmo were away from home, but the couple of goals they conceded pretty suspect, and they scored a really nice second goal. But when you look at that goal and they really play through Helsinki really well, I don't think they're going to afford that luxury against Rangers. And also Helsinki pressed them. I think the second goal came from them pressing Malmo twice and causing 2 turnovers of the ball. And I was looking at that and thinking, if they're this lax against Rangers playing out from the back, they're going to come across some struggle. So I'm going to watch a little bit more of them today and ahead of tomorrow. But I think if we're going to have to play much harder games in the Champions League if we get there, and we've beaten better teams to get to this point. But you're right, they'll head into this game as well with being relatively confident. But I think they will be more looking at our results over the last few seasons, especially us being at home for the second leg, hopefully with a full Ibrox behind us. And I think they would maybe have a right to be a little bit more wary of that than we are of going away to Sweden.
Yeah, absolutely. You touched on Scott Wright there. He's one of the players that has certainly played himself into the manager's thinking ahead of tomorrow. Joshua, a fantastic display at the weekend, and the manager said as much afterwards that he has given them something to think about. Is he a player that you would start in Sweden tomorrow night?
Probably, yeah, I think so. I'd probably rather go for either a Hadji or a Wright on the right of the front three, as opposed to playing kind of Ruffin Itten or Ruffin Sakala. And I think Wright, I think it's interesting because he seems to be so undeniably popular with every Rangers supporter at the moment. But I think that's because every time he's had limited chances, but every time he's had a chance, he's impressed. I think his progression is pretty evident game on game. And against Livingston, I thought he was excellent. I mean, his goal obviously is the standout, but just in different passages of play, how he helped his team, and I think Gerrard as well said that he probably deserved to start, but I think you could probably take from Gerrard's comments that he was waiting to start him in this game, and I think that actually I don't know who will start in the central strike position tomorrow, whether it be Itten because he didn't start at the weekend, but I think that Wright, Kent, and potentially Sakala, what we've seen against Real Madrid, especially in Europe, something that I don't think, aside from Kent's pace, we've not really enjoyed that breakaway pace in our front three. You know, if it's been Morelos and Hadji with Kent. Morelos is still a good progressive runner, but he's not someone he's not got lightning quick pace like a Wright or a Sakala. So I think that's a really interesting dynamic that might just refresh the front three this season. And I think what you could see is Wright come into the European setup and then really embrace the space that he'll have to play in comparatively to domestically. And him, Sakala and Kent could really pose opposition problems away from home, because you remember it was such a threat. Kent's kind of diagonal runs in behind last season that caused Nicolas Otamendi's red card, and I think just have that different dynamic in Europe, along with John Lundstrom in the middle of the pitch, who I thought as well for a small cameo Saturday from deep showed some really impressive traits. But those driving runs, I think, in Europe will be a real advantage to us too. So I'm excited to see how that formation that Gerrard said needed a little bit of tinkering, I'm excited to see how that comes to fruition tomorrow and hopefully in the next round of the qualifiers.
Yeah, but we've got a question here from Callum Milligan. Can we take the performance from the Livingston game into the Malmo game? For me, I mean, it was never get out of second gear on Saturday, Joshua. I felt they looked like they were going to run away with it at times when they went 1-0 up early on, but it was a bit frustrating after that until Scott Wright scored that second goal. But it's a completely different game on Tuesday, isn't it? I expect Malmo to come out more than what Livingston did.
Yeah, and I think you just look at a game like that, and Livingston had, I think, 2 shots off target. Their expected goals was something like 0.08. And that's not criticism of Livingston, because I think they limited Rangers well, but it's just such a niche type of game. I think, you know, you're playing in such restricted space. It's not an end-to-end game where both teams are intentful in attacking. And I mean, what can Livingston do? They're playing a far superior team. They're trying to work out a game plan that will allow them some avenues to go. But I just think these type of games are so specific and so unlike a European tie that I think what we can take from the Livingston game into the Malmo game is the momentum still there. 20th home win in a row, I think it was. You know, a great impact by players like Wright. But I think in terms of games, this is a games that I think this Rangers team has always thrived on. You look at throughout Gerrard's tenure, we still only lost something like 6 games or 5. You know, is it like 6 or 7 games over the 3 European ties, which is ridiculous. Do you know what I mean? So you look at these type of games, and I think it's almost like the Rangers team are just excited about the space they have to play in, and you know they don't have to earn their space before they can attack. I'd say mainly confidence, but I think this team are so robotic like in their focus, and we'll just take to the different adaptation of a game state like Duckwater, as they have done for 2 seasons really now, I'd say.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got another point here. Douglas Connery's asking prediction for the Malmo game, guys. Listen, I think there's going to be goals in this. Malmo score a lot of goals, but they also concede a lot as well. I fancy Rangers to get a result over in Sweden. I'm going to plump for it a 2-1.
That's what I was going to say. No, I can't say that, can I? I'll actually say 2-0 because I think that the goals I've seen them concede over, just watching them the last couple of days, I do think if Rangers sit quite high in that mid block and press them at times, I do think that could bear some success. But I agree, I don't think it'll be easy at all. But I just think the level this Rangers side can hit in Europe. Obviously, we don't know if they will, but presuming that they will, if they hit that level, you look at the amount of goals we've scored against some Europe, 3 away to Benfica, 4 away to Antwerp just last season. I'd be pretty confident that we'll take chances if given them. So I'll go for 2-0 since you took my 2-1.
Yeah, we're going for a Rangers victory tomorrow night. Now, not wanting to look too far ahead, of course, but the playoff round draw takes place at 11 a.m. this morning. The winners of Rangers or Malmo will be in the unseeded part of the draw, I'm told, so I'm led to believe. Now, possible opponents they could face, Red Bull Salzburg, which is already one team that have been quite impressive over the last few years, so that's one team you'd probably want to avoid. Dinamo Zagreb or Legia Warsaw, we know all about them. Ferencvaros, of course, put out Celtic last season, or Slavia Prague, Olympiacos or Ludogorets. So, I mean, of the clubs in there, Joshua, is it one that sticks out that you maybe want to avoid?
Salzburg, definitely Salzburg. Yeah. Again, look at the names, and I think we've beaten better teams, but I think there's a lot of good teams in there. I was just saying to you before we went on air, I think even if you look back to the Slavia Prague game, I think firstly we're in a better position to go toe to toe with a team like that because we've increased the power in our team, especially with Lundstrom in the middle of the pitch. But in that first half against Slavia, after we drawn 1-1 away from home, we were really unfortunate not to score. And I think that if we were to draw them again, I'd be confident that the side would really want to avenge that defeat and more so that could do that. But there's, as you say, there's a lot of tricky ties in there. Legia Warsaw, obviously we beat. Was it 1-0 on aggregate? We drew 0-0 away, and then the Morelos
for the header.
Yeah. So I don't know who I'd pick out of those sides. And you remember as well, like Galatasaray last season was a difficult draw, and we absolutely bodied them at Ibrox, didn't we? 2 wonderful goals. So I think it's just a case of what we've been saying. If we do get to the Champions League, we'll have to play some really tough teams. We'll have to play teams to the level and above of Red Bull Salzburg. Yeah. But they would be the team that I would be most wary of because they're very good, and they're still coached by the American coach Jesse March, who is heavily linked with Celtic throughout the summer, and has had great success with Salzburg in the Austrian league. So we shall see. We obviously got to get past Malmo first, but yeah, there's a lot of tricky ties, a lot of ties that would maybe frighten me at first glance. But then again, if Rangers play to the level that they're capable of, I don't think there's anyone there that we couldn't beat. So I think that's just me being a bit of a cynical football fan. Yeah, and I think of all the teams there as well, if they see that they could possibly draw Rangers, I don't think anyone would fancy Rangers either. Their European record under Steven Gerrard is ridiculous, as we touched on. So yeah, I think they're all winnable ties, whoever they face when they go in there. Not easy, of course, and Malmo's not going to be easy either. I think it's going to be a tough test for Rangers, but they're certainly well equipped to progress. As the sun just beats down in my window here, I'll just close the line so you can. We've not got any of it today.
I've been spoiled down here in Warrington.
Absolutely.
Finally, now for Joshua, I mean, it was a winning weekend for Rangers. Off to a flyer against Livingston. We touched on it a little earlier. In terms of the game, what did you make of it? They were always in control, weren't they? They were never really under any real sort of threat. I think John McLaughlin, I put in the man by man. He could have sat in the Copeland Road stand and nobody really would have noticed. But it was one of those run-of-the-mill, easy victory to kick off the season.
Yeah, I don't think there's that much you can take from it. I mean, I don't think Rangers were fantastic, but I think, again, they're pretty good. I think these games are really tough when you have to, said a minute ago, you have to earn the space before you can create. You have to move the team around. And I think it's just Rangers have these games so often. And it's like, if you look at it on the surface, it's absolutely perfect win for these type of situations. A team comes naturally, as I said, no criticism of Livingston, but they want to limit. The first intention is to limit Rangers because Rangers are a superior side. That's only natural. So if you restrict them to, I think it was 1 or 2 shots off target, but if your goalkeeper only touches the ball in possession, if you score 3 goals without, as you say, getting out of second or third gear, I don't think you can ask for much more. Takeaways as well was I think Sakala had a quite quiet game. I think that's completely to be expected, and it will take him time again to adapt to these matches played in limited spaces. But he certainly wasn't as involved. Wasn't as involved on the ball as I'd maybe hoped. But yeah, I don't think there's too much we can learn from it. I think it was Tav was really impressive. That would probably be my other takeaway. And the increasing question of he in my opinion, Stephen Davis alongside Stephen Davis was the best Rangers player on the park, and maybe Scott Wright on the weekends. And there's still that overhanging question of how do you play Tav, who's so important to us, and try and incorporate Nathan Patterson. So I think that's going to be an ongoing thing. But he's just outstanding levels of consistency and is a fantastic player. So another interesting thing I don't know what you thought about the set piece goal, but I thought I was highlighting that on Twitter, and I thought it was really interesting the way that Rangers have done that a lot, where they overload the front post, and Goldson, I think normally because teams will have their more dominant headers at the back stick, you've seen Goldson got 2 or 3 goals and could have had a few more nipping off the front, and Rangers put, I think, all 3 of their attacking runners to the front post, and I think quite deliberately kept Hadji spare, knowing that overload might lead to him having some space at the back. So that was an interesting takeaway, just from little set piece routines they've always been working on. And Hadji as well was fantastic until his injury. But I mean, do you take anything majorly away from it, or do you just think as well it's run of the mill but impressive consistency?
Yeah, they were always in control. I think they could up gears it if they wanted to. It was just trying to find the space in behind the Livingston defence, really. And that's really the main takeouts. It's worrying that Hadji had to limp off. And in fact, there's a good article on the website today, folks, from Johnny McFarlane, just regarding protecting players and just wild challenges going in. We've seen the one on Calvin Bassey at the end as well, which was beyond belief, really, how it was.
Yeah, I know.
But yeah, so glance your eye over that today, folks. But yeah, that'll do us there. Thanks very much, Joshua, for joining us as always. A lot of good stuff coming on the website, folks. So get yourselves over to rangersreview.co.uk and also on the socials on Twitter and Facebook as well. Enjoy your day. We'll be back tomorrow.